What's up, Raptors fans? Welcome to the Watch Report. Thank you to everyone, every single one of you that has been with me for the live streams the last couple of days. I very much appreciate you guys being there. Now let's talk about some Raptors news. We know this man right here is no longer a Raptor. He has been signed in trade to the Miami Heat. We don't know the entire details of their trade, so I won't be covering him, but let's focus our attention on the other news about the Raptors re-signing Gary Trent Jr. to a 3-year, $54 million contract. So for today's video, I'm going to break down why it's important for the Raptors to re-sign Gary Trent Jr., what I think of this deal, and what does Gary Trent Jr. mean for the Raptors moving forward. But before we get into the details of the video, guys, you know the drill. Give this video a thumbs up. It helps reach more basketball fans like yourself. And if you want to hit the subscribe button as well, we're super close to 2,000 subscribers. That'd be very much appreciated. With that being said, let's get into today's video. So let's start our video talking about why this was very important for the Raptors. Now that the Raptors have lost Kyle Lowry, it's very important that we get someone in the shooting guard position. And that shooting guard position is going to be filled out by Gary Trent Jr. Now, he is only 22 years old. That is another reason why I believe it's super important for the Raptors to re-sign Gary Trent Jr. for someone who's averaged 16 points last season for a team that has really struggled in terms of scoring, that needs scoring help. I think Gary Trent Jr. is going to be tremendous. He's going to get more touches now that Kyle Lowry is gone to the Miami Heat. So I think this is huge moving forward. Another reason I really believe the Raptors absolutely needed to re-sign Gary Trent Jr. is when you take a look at the first day of free agency, we have really striked out on a lot of free agents. Unfortunately, no matter how much us Raptors fans say that free agents will come to Toronto, we've missed out on some key free agents. We know we've missed out on centers. Jared Allen has re-signed with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Rashawn Holmes not too long ago re-signed with the Sacramento Kings. I mean, we're losing out on a lot of key free agents, and Gary Trent Jr. just seems like someone who really wants to be in the Raptors system, the culture. He really embraced what it means to be a Raptor. So that is one of the very important reasons we needed to re-sign Gary Trent Jr. We need some scoring help. He can score. We know that. We've seen him put up tremendous efforts. He's put up 44 points, 43 points, and that game-winning shot. He's still so young, and he has so much room to improve. And he seems like he's really good friends with OG Anunoby. They seem like they're developing a nice chemistry there. And he just seems like a total Raptors player. You know what? He seems really hardworking. And in terms of, again, like I talked about, there's just, for whatever reason, we talk about this every free agency. We think we're getting some players, but for whatever reason, a lot of players do not want to come to Toronto. Now we get Gary Trent Jr. for someone who wants to be here. So I think this is huge for the Raptors. Now let's talk about what this deal is. Now we know some news came out not too long ago about Norman Powell signing a 5-year, $98 million contract with the Portland Trail Blazers. Now the main reason we traded Norman Powell was because we didn't want to pay him around $20 million. But we do get someone cheaper than Norman Powell. That is something we do need to keep in mind. When you compare the ages, obviously Gary Trent Jr. is much younger than Norman Powell, and we still have a lot of time to develop Gary Trent Jr. So I think 3 years, $18 million per season is a good contract for Gary Trent Jr. That is a good deal. There definitely could have been a possibility of some team out there just throwing some crazy money, and we've seen day one only. It's only been day one, yet we've already seen crazy deals going down. So I think that's a reasonable price for Gary Trent Jr. That is not too bad. Now let's move on to our last thing, which is what this means moving forward for the Raptors. Now 3 years is not a lot in terms of he's only going to be here for 3 years. That is not a lot, but is Masai Ujiri doing a timeline similar to how he did with Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, and when we re-signed Fred VanVleet to that 2-year deal where he kind of gives the Raptors a window to evaluate where this team is headed and how the talent is going to be several years from now. Now, I do believe Gary Trent Jr. did sign a shorter contract because I feel like he can get a lot more money 3 years from now. So that is one of the reasons I do believe. But it could also be a case of the management wanting to evaluate the talent, not lock him in for 4 or 5 years. But I would have really liked for the Raptors to get 4 years out of that deal. But it's still a really good contract. Moving forward, Gary Trent Jr. could definitely develop into a better shooter. He's shown the capability of hitting clutch shots. So if we can get him to be somewhat along the lines of getting let's say a 20-point score per game, hitting clutch shots for us, he can be that main guy we need from the shooting guard position that can provide some points. So I think he fits in with this team really well. He's also got good size as well. So as much as I love Kyle Lowry, we're not going to have a short backcourt. So that's going to be nice with Gary Trent Jr. So this is some exciting news for the Raptors. We've missed out on a lot of free agents. It does suck. It is unfortunate. It happens every single off-season where we say we're going to get this man, and unfortunately we do miss out. And it's great that we were able to sign someone who wants to be here on a reasonable contract. So I really like this contract. I thought it was a great contract for both parties. It works out for Gary Trent Jr., it works out for the Raptors as well. But before we end this video off, I do want to ask you guys, do you think that's a fair deal when you compare to not only Norman Powell, but just overall what free agents we're getting today? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you guys are still watching this video, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.